Thank you very much. For those of you who I've not met yet, my name is Gerry Agnes, and I am blessed to be part of the team at Elevations Credit Union. Our credit union is based in Boulder, Colorado, and for those of you who don't know much about credit unions, we're nonprofit financial cooperatives, and many organizations, principally employers across the nation, created credit unions years ago. Some of you might be familiar with Navy Federal Credit Union, the largest in the nation. Ours began at the steps of the Mackey Auditorium at the University of Colorado about 60-some years ago, 1953. And it was an organization that actually began with this cash box. There were 12 individuals and their $50 that started our credit union. Today, we have about 350 employees. We're a small community-based organization. We have branches that are just north of Denver and going up to Fort Collins along the Front Range. And we have about 108,000 members. And as a small community-based organization, we are delighted to be in Boulder, where NIST is as well. And our mission is similar to some of yours in the audience here. I know there's educators in the room who are equipping our students to lead the world in the future, our healthcare industries to keep us healthy and restore our health when needed, and financial organizations to build prosperity. Our purpose is to create solutions for a better life for our members. It's as simple as that. It's a very wonderful organization. We compete, though, against some of the largest in the world. Now, banking is very, very important. And one thing we learned along the way in Baldrige is how do you benchmark yourself, and who do you compete against? And we do compete against some of the largest banks. Now, credit unions, we're small as an industry. We represent about 6% of the market. Banks about 94% of the market. But that doesn't mean that we can't compete mightily against them. And against these two, which are our major competitors, Wells and Chase as the national money bank centers banks, and then First Bank, who's based out of Colorado, very, very strong competitors. But we're winning in our marketplace, and I'll tell you a little bit about it. Now, for those of you who are going to be here for the rest of the conference, you're going to see these slides, and for those of you who don't ski, we're using this analogy of skiing. We talk about the green slopes. They're kind of flat, and this is where you kind of begin, and so you get the beginner step. Then you get to the blue slopes, intermediate, a little bit quicker, turning a little bit faster, and then you get to the black slopes, and that's where a lot of fun happens, and ultimately to the double diamonds, and that's where the experts, and very few skiers actually get there. But we began our process, and we started to ask ourselves, well, really, how good are we? And we looked back for the last half decade before we began our quest for Baldrige. And our organization performed very well in many respects. We had 1 in 4 residents in our primary market that were members of our credit union. We have a great brand and a wonderful organization, but there are some things that we needed to do a little bit differently. As you can see here, capital in a financial institution is king. And it's very, very important. But our capital wasn't growing nearly as quickly as our competitors, about 1/7. Our members, which are really the lifeblood of the organization, were about 1/3 of our peer group. And then our assets, how much money our members were giving us so we can lend them back out in the community to other members, wasn't growing nearly as well. So we knew we had to do something. But the timing of it was pretty precarious. Now, this is the history of the financial crisis, and I don't want to dwell on it, but it was at a very important time in our history. For anybody who's working today has never been through a crisis like we went through. And we began this discussion of Baldrige back in 2008. And those of you who remember 2008, it was a tough year. And our discussion actually began in the boardroom when I was interviewing for the CEO position. They said, what might you bring? What framework might you use to help lead us as we are knowing we're going into this very difficult time? And we began talking about the Baldrige framework. And they were so intrigued, they hired me, so that turned out really well. And we started learning about the Baldrige framework because it was new to the organization. And it took us about 6 months. And it's actually at the depths of the recession that we said we want to do this. Now, many people were asking us, why would you spend the financial capital and the human resources to undertake this daunting challenge of this Baldrige framework in the middle of a crisis? And we thought to ourselves very strongly, about that. We said, we're really at a fork in the road. And we thought if we take the wrong fork, we might end up in mediocrity. And I can tell you, working for a mediocre firm is not fun. It's actually more difficult than it is to take a more rigorous and daunting challenge of excellence through the Baldrige framework. And so we really chose what I would say, not the easy route, but the more preferred route. And looking back, it certainly was the correct course. But we had to start someplace. Now, this is a name badge. All of our employees have a name badge. And for those of you who were here last night and saw Pete Rice on the stage with me, that's his picture there. And it says he's VP of Epics. That's our Enterprise Performance Excellence. He's now Senior Vice President, by the way. He's been promoted. But we started our name badge program a while ago. What we wanted to do was to make sure that we understood where we're going and who we are and how we're going to get there. And we started with our core values because it's so important as an organization. When I first came on in August of 2008, I asked the leadership team, I said, what are our core values? And they all started with C, and some of them could remember a few of the words, but not all of them. And then I'd go and ask all the staff, where's our value system and how do we operate? And they could remember. Some of the words were like commit, creative, control, words like a collaboration, but they couldn't remember them all and they didn't really understand what they meant. I thought, oh my, we must start right here, right now about who we are, where we're going, and how we're going to get there. So we created our core values and we got input from all of our employees and our board of directors. And we began as a foundation building process. I said, where are we going to go? How are we going to get there? What's our vision? And you can see here that we're kind of following the model of Jim Collins. I'm certainly a groupie of his. And we created our BHAG, our Big, Hairy, Audacious Goal. And it really is a bold goal to win the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award. But when we spoke about that in April of 2009, it was very clear it wasn't about the award. It was about the journey to excellence. In fact, I quite clearly remember telling the board, if we win the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award, it may not be for 10 or 15 years, and it may not ever happen while I'm CEO. And as my job as CEO is to really turn this organization over to the next CEO in better condition than it is today. I'm fortunate and blessed to be the sixth CEO of this 6-decade-old company, and I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. They were here before me, and they created a wonderful organization, and my goal then is to carry that on. And so we thought through the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award program and its framework, we'd be able to do that. And so all of our employees bought into this very early. It wasn't just a few, it was everybody from top to bottom, board of directors and everybody involved. So it permeated the entire organization. Now, some of you have seen the movie, I could tell by the laughs, A Few Good Men. One of my favorite movies of all time. And you'll remember Daniel Kaffee, who's played by Tom Cruise, is a young Harvard graduate, never been in a courtroom before, and he's putting on trial Colonel Jessup of Guantanamo Bay, of all places. And this is an epic scene where he's being interrogated and examined, and he's feeling very uncomfortable. He blurts out, "You can't handle the truth." And it reminds me oftentimes of many organizations where truth is really hard to handle. Sometimes it makes organizations and the people in them be fearful, maybe a little embarrassed, and maybe kind of withholding some information or want to control or blame others. And so we knew very early on that in order to actually make the progress that we wanted to get in the Baldrige framework, is we had to get to that source of truth. Now I'll tell you, if I had one goal, this is very important, if I had one goal as a CEO to measure my success, it would be, have I created an environment with our team that's safe, where we can have the honest, brutally honest conversations about salient matters that will benefit our members, our employees, and our community. If I could do that one thing, I will feel like I've been successful. So when I hand over the opportunity to the next CEO, that she or he will be as blessed as I have when I walked in the doors. And so we started building that process. And here's an example. At the end of the day, employees really want to be seen, they want to be heard, and they want to be valued. And that's the environment that we try to create. And let me give you an example. When I first got there, going around asking about where we want to go and what we want to do. We were in this meeting. It was a very important meeting. And one of our leaders asked a question that hadn't been asked in over a decade. And that is, when are we going to change our core operating system? Now, for those of you in healthcare, this is like doing a heart transplant for a financial institution. It is serious because our core operating system affects every employee, every member in the entire organization. And so it is a big deal. And you could hear a pin drop in the room when that question was asked. I thought, oh my, we're onto something. Because someone went out on a limb and asked a very important question. And to answer it for us, it was about 15% of our capital. Now, as a nonprofit cooperative, being in business for almost 60 years, we were asking the question, should we change something and spend 15% of what we've accumulated for about 6 decades? It's a big question. So it's a risky question. And the important thing is we listened. We listened hard. And so we started asking more questions. So I'd go out to the teller line and say, tell me about, how's the system work for you? Oh, it's cumbersome and we can't serve our members very well. And then I go back to the IT department. Well, tell me about the system, thinking, well, if the front office doesn't like it, they might love it. And they said, oh, we can't stand it. The network's not good. It's not integrated. I thought, oh my, we're onto something here. And so when both sides of the house, if you will, were not happy with the system, but no one was asking the questions. So what did we do? We changed it. And as people started seeing, that's one of many examples, as people started seeing that we were wanting to listen to what they have to say, we valued their input and actually take action upon it. They realized it's safe. It's safe to ask those hard questions. And so that's really, I think, what enabled us to persevere and then get on to what we'd call the blue slopes, our intermediate slopes. Now, some of you may recognize this curve. We call it the pain curve. It is painful. In the very beginning, we said, oh gosh, we're doing so well. We have 1 in 4 households in our marketplace and we're doing a lot of good things. But then we started looking in and looking at the data and realized, we're not doing so well. And we had our share of humble pie. Sometimes it was by the slice, but sometimes we ate the whole pie. It was pretty tough. But as we started asking those questions and answering them honestly and getting our employees involved, those of you who've read Jim Collins, the flywheel effect began to work. And as that began to motion and roll and move, we started realizing we're getting momentum and we're able to move along this difficult path during the worst financial crisis as a financial institution. So it's quite remarkable that over time, our perceptions and reality became closer and closer and closer. And as we began this program in April of 2009, at the end of 2013, we won our state award. And then in 2014, in May, we dropped our first application. And here we are today. So you can imagine the momentum of the organization was quite strong. Important point for leaders is you've got to be able to celebrate. Now, I could be accused of not celebrating enough, but we try to celebrate as much as we can. There's small victories, there's large victories. Relish every one of them. Because as you celebrate with your team, you're able to rejuvenate their spirits and keep that momentum going along. The leadership system is really important because to me, that's what enables us to get to the advanced slopes. Now, not everybody gets to the advanced slopes. And as a skier, I can tell you, it can be very, very treacherous up there. Now, this is our strategic planning process. And I will tell you, this diagram probably doesn't look vastly different than yours in terms of getting your input, understanding the marketplace, setting your direction, and establishing your goals and initiatives. All of that is a very similar process. Now, I'll tell you, we dedicate a lot of resources to planning. And I think we do a very good job of it. I think we do a very good job. But what we do excellent is how we execute the plan. Our plan is not something that sits back on the credenza and collects dust. It's actively managed. And there's going to be a term you're going to hear from our breakout sessions later on today and tomorrow and the following day. It's called operational rhythm. And I would encourage you to go to those sessions and learn. Later on, you're going to hear from our board chair, Katie Larson, and our CFO, Michael Calcote, talking about the strategic planning process. And I would encourage you to listen and learn and inquire with them about our operational rhythm, because that's what goes on inside of the box of planning. And it's how we execute. We do what we say we're going to do. Our leadership system, very similar to some of yours as well. starts with strategic planning, then goes into plan and align resources. And as a nonprofit cooperative, our resources are extremely limited, very, very limited. And this is where I'd say the gnashing of teeth occurs, because we only have so much we can do, and we often have to say no to some very important things. And that is some of the hardest, brutally honest discussions we can have. What aren't we going to do? And then what are we going to do? How do we create that environment? And then that kind of flows back into that operational rhythm. Later on today, you'll hear Jay Champion and Matt Matthews talk about our workforce and our leadership system. And again, that operational rhythm is the key component of that. So I'd encourage you to listen and learn from them in that area. Ultimately, you got to keep the momentum going. And when you're skiing on the advanced slopes and you get up to the expert slopes, now, I've been on a couple of expert slopes in my time, and I can tell you they can be very intimidating, but it really is about momentum. And as you get up there, you start to say, well, then how's this framework work? Does it produce results at the end of the day? And here you can see right next to each chart or graph how we performed the half decade after we adopted the Baldrige framework. Instead of doing 1/7 of the capital growth, we're almost 2 to 1. And our members were 1/3, 6 to 1. And for our assets, almost 2 to 1 as well. So just a complete stark contrast of results stemming from the Baldrige framework. It really centered around for us about our winning strategy. Member centricity, our members are at the middle of it. We have our wonderful staff, about 350 employees, and they're fully engaged. During this time frame, the last 5 years, our employee engagement went up 13 ticks, which then produces a very loyal member base. We're always loyal, but even more loyal today, up 7 points. And then the financial results, really just a byproduct of our employees serving our members and doing a great job. But you've heard from me. I'd like to have you hear from some of our members and employees about the impact of leadership to them.
Elevations. I've actually been a member for 10 years. We love Elevations because they really have a lot of services that help you negotiate the financial world.
Love Elevations for all the wonderful stuff they do in our community. They care about your family and the well-being of it.
Elevations has a bike drive every 2 years where they collect bikes from the community that aren't being used, and they donate them to community cycles. We refurbish them.
Thank you guys.
You're welcome. Are you familiar with the credit union?
I am. I'm a member.
Has your bank ever bought you flowers?
The people that work at Elevations are so friendly, and they're obviously happy doing what they do, and it really translates to when I come in as a client. I love working for Elevations because of the involvement we have in the community.
Every day of the year and during floods and fires, Elevations is really there for us and there for this community.
I love it because it's local.
I think it's important to bank locally and keep your dollars in this community because it goes to pay local tellers and it also gets loaned out to support local business, which is really important.
I get to see the people that make us who we are. We're nothing without those members. They are Elevations. They're what make me happy every day.
So you're a member of the credit union?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I got a hug.
Elevations Credit Union.
Yes, you are correct.
Oh!
Elevation Credit Union.
Yeah!
Oh,
So we thank you for your time this morning, and we look forward to sharing and learning with you. And thank you, and make it a great day.